Hello, welcome to Mark Atwood Show, Adventures in a Meat Suit. Today, I am blessed to be joined by Emma Goodwin. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Mark. I love that name, Adventures in a Meat
Mark?
Suit. Making your mark on the world in your meat suit.
Well,
Love it.
Yeah, I got a bit of flack about that at the beginning because, meat suit connotations with some other nefarious stuff. But I wanted to reclaim ownership of it because I always found that quite an amusing expression, like we're spirits in meat suits.
Exactly.
So it's
having a spiritual experience. Yeah, humans.
Well, yeah, we're spirits having a human experience,
That's right.
Having a spiritual experience. And trying to work it all out. That's what the channel is all about. So we're going to talk about food today, I think, aren't we?
Yes, food as medicine. And highlighting...
I brought some friends to say hello.
Did you?
Hello.
Oh, how lovely. I brought some friends too.
Go on.
I bought some rocket straight out of my garden, this is how big rocket leaves should really be if they're really grown nicely. What have you got there? Rucola, yeah.
Rucola, as my German chef friend used to say. This is lemon, believe it or not, and I'm making quinine out of these.
Beautiful, yeah.
Which I'm having every day. It makes you fart a lot, but it's good.
Does it? So you boil up the skins of the citrus, especially the grapefruit, I hear, is particularly effective. And it's quite a bitter brew, isn't it? But you just need a few drops. It's disgusting.
I take a good swig every morning. Right. Okay. And so does my son. Sit there, I make his breakfast before school. It's right, swig that, take that zinc. Now go and wear your mask for 6 hours.
They don't make them wear them at school, do they?
Yes, they do. It's let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
I've got a
little sign. It just says I'm exempt from wearing a mask, and people seem to be very okay with it. They say, "Have you got a mask?" I say, "No, I'm exempt from wearing a mask," and they go, "Oh, okay."
Well, I'm not wearing masks, but the kids at school, they won't let them in without it. So, and the kids want to be there because they want to see their friends. They want to advance their life. It's their decision at the moment, but it is what it is. I'm not, I've just had a chat about the state of care homes and schools, and it's I want to talk about food because it's positive.
Yes.
So quickly tell us what this is going to be about, then tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll take it from there. How's that?
Well, great. I'd just like to draw people's attention. I'm sure a lot of people are already aware, but as far as I can tell, our food system has effectively been weaponized along with lots of other institutions and processes and things in our lives. And when we can see where it's been poisoned, we can avoid it like the plague and then survive and thrive in these troubled times. So
absolutely. That's why I've got these.
That's why you got those. That's right. Yeah.
For my liver.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, my name is Emma.
Sorry, Emma.
My name is Emma Goodwin, and I have an online cookery school called Timeless Cookery. And when I was pregnant with my children, which was 20 years ago now, I was a bit poorly, and they were a bit poorly when they popped out. And even though I'd been buying organic and cooking from scratch since the 1980s, I was still not well, and neither were my children. We were all really poorly. So we've got, the list is endless of the ailments that we were suffering with. But since I discovered GAPS, which is Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who was a Russian surgeon neurologist, and then her son was vaccine damaged and became autistic, and she brought him back to fully functioning using food as medicine with the GAPS protocol. So when I read that book, I was literally just crying tears of relief because it explained all the glue ear and the ear infections and the snotty noses and the sadness, the depression, the anxiety, the tumors, the Tourette's, the tics that we were having as a family. And when I started to implement this way of eating, I was just so liberated and so lifted. And I was like, everybody needs to know about this. Every parent.
I've got a story to tell about that because it was about 12 years ago. I was 18 stone. and I'm only 5'8", so I was like a barrel. And I was really ill. I was a heart attack waiting to happen, basically.
Okay.
And I had really high levels of cortisol because I was running a business with lots of employees, and it was a stressful time when the crash happened and all of that. And anyway, I ended up going on a fast in Devon. at the most inappropriately named place for a fasting retreat called Ham Farm. And I went there with, I think I went on my own the first time, but it changed my life, which is why I've got these now.
Brilliant.
Because I was really ill.
Well done for coming back to a full state of thriving.
Well, I'm still a bit of an idiot. I still
we're all on a journey, aren't we? We're all on our journey.
But you know, these once you start getting these into your life, but the gaps I've never heard of. This sounds really interesting.
Well, you know, it's been quite censored. There's been lots of
really?
Yeah, it's been going over 25 years, and there are GAPS practitioners who are well trained, and there are GAPS coaches. I'm a GAPS coach. That means I just basically teach people how to cook, you know, because once you can just grasp the principles of the timeless principles of, you know, how we used to cook way back, you know, when there was the cauldron, before the adorning of the age of the fridge, and before the dawning of how food was pasteurized to keep a long shelf life. So we eat a lot of fermented foods. You know, lots of the foods we all know and love are fermented. Bread and cheese and beer and, you know, whatever, it's all fermented. Lots of it's very good for us, but some of it, because of the way our agriculture has been abused, has been poisoned, you know. So I want to just draw attention to people and say that we can choose not to and still eat well and not suffer. You know, we don't have to, if we say I'm not going to have any bread, it doesn't mean to say you can't actually feel satisfied and enjoy your food, you know. But it frightens people when you say, because we don't eat any grains on GAPS. Don't eat any grains.
I know grains are bad for you, and I've known that for a while, but they're also very addictive, aren't they? Because bread, well, there's a couple of things about bread. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I know that it creates kind of dopamine when you eat it, so it becomes like addictive. Yeah. But the biggest problem with bread is not necessarily the gluten, it's the glyphosates that are sprayed onto the wheat.
Glyphosates, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's really the big issue for bread, which is...
Exactly. Most of the grains, all of the grains, if they're not grown organically, a lot of them are sprayed with glyphosate as a desiccant. So before the farmer, so first of all, he'll give it a spray just to get rid of some weeds. And then literally just before they harvest, they also give it another extra spray of glyphosate to make the seed heads fall off the stalks. So in the old days, they just used to winnow it and thresh it, you know, and then so they'd have to do it mechanically to bash it. But now they do it chemically by spraying glyphosate on it to make them. But this is so dangerous because, you know, glyphosate really messes with the way your body, well, I won't go into details because it's really boring, but it really messes with you. And also, if any animals are fed grains that have glyphosate on them, that glyphosate then affects the fats that are in those animals, and then it affects you as well. So, I mean, it's shocking that these chemical companies should be really held to account. They've been slowly poisoning us ever since wonderful, what's her name, who did Silent Spring, the book Silent Spring in the 1960s, which was all about not hearing the birds in the springtime anymore. Rachel Carson, I think her name was. It was a classic piece of you know, exposition. It exposed what was happening. There weren't any birds singing anymore, you know, a few years running, because they overdid it with the chemical spraying.
Well, last summer there were no insects on the windscreens.
No.
You know, there were more this year, interestingly.
Were they? Okay. Yeah, I've been noticing that over these last 4 or 5 years, the insect populations are dwindling.
Totally. And, you know, there's no coincidences between what you just said and the fact that the cancer rate is now like 70+% compared to 1% 120 years ago. The obesity rate is bang up there. You know, a lot of people don't realize that fat is actually nothing to do with calories. It's to do with toxins, and the toxins get stored in your fat cells, and that's why you get fat, because you...
But the thing is, we need these animal fats, really, if we're going to heal the gut. So you were talking about having a dopamine effect from when you eat wheat, or eat it's the proteins in wheat, the glucoprotein, I can't remember what they're called now, but the proteins that are in gluten, if they're not adequately broken down into their smallest building blocks, like imagine proteins are like Lego bricks and they get broken down into amino acids if your digestion works properly. And if your digestion isn't working properly, those Lego bricks stay in whole pieces and go through the holes in your leaky gut. into your bloodstream and end up going through the blood-brain barrier and make something called a glutamorphine, which actually has an opiate effect.
Well, there you go.
And the same with the proteins in cheeses. So casomorphines can also hit your brain. So literally, if you have a cheese sandwich and you've got leaky gut, you get high. You get high on a cheese sandwich. And that's why after lunch, about 3 hours later, 2 hours later, you reach for the next fix.
You know, a couple of my friends got done for cheese sandwich dealing a few years ago.
Man, though, it's scary because
my sandwich.
You know, but we're all addicts if you've got leaky gut.
Totally. I mean, it's like the fast food, you know, kids. My kids never had McDonald's. Well, I think they went once. I think I took them once. It was such a horrific experience. I said, look, I'm never doing this again. And, you know, because it's kind of like you even when you're awake to food, it's very easy to slip.
Yeah.
Slip. And, you know, I found that with myself. You know, the reason I bought these is because I put them on the side so that I get up in the morning and I see them, you know, and then I do something with them. Because if I put them in the fridge, I forget about them. Yeah. And then I'll end up throwing them away a week later because I've forgotten about them.
Yeah, no, you've got to get them fresh. Yeah. So you were talking about heart disease, and Dr. Natasha's second book, her first book is called GAPS, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, which also is alluding to the connection, obviously, between the gut and the brain. Because once you start eating straight, you get your brain back and all the brain fog goes out the window and you can actually think for yourself and choose where your attention is going rather than get led like a sheeple.
That would be very useful right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's why people need to get on it, you know. But her second book was called Atherosclerosis, or Put Your Heart in Your Mouth, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's all about heart disease. And it's all about how your arteries don't fill up and get clogged up by eating fat. They get clogged up by eating these polluted grain products, these intensively produced food-like products of the food industry.
I used to have an analogy for that those types of foods and sugars and things when they go in through your arteries in the blood, they kind of scratch the side of the artery wall, and then the body comes out with like Spider-Man, and then and then that narrows the artery, right?
It's like a plaster. That's it. So when the inside of your arteries are damaged by these toxins and environmental things like EMFs, which is like radiation poisoning, so you get if you're weak and wobbly because you haven't been eating properly, your membranes and the surfaces of your arteries are weak and wobbly. So where they get scratched and damaged easily, then it does that plaster effect. So literally you're getting plastered because your body's trying to make you better, you know. And when they talk about cholesterol is something that your body makes to make you better. So if you're going to the doctor to get a cholesterol test and you've just barked your shin or stubbed your toe really, really badly, your cholesterol is going to be a lot higher than if you didn't. And it's there because it's trying to help you cope with the inflammation and cope with the damage in your body. Cholesterol, I mean, the highest cholesterol containing food is caviar. That's what all the rich people are eating because it's so expensive. You know, it's
James Bond likes a bit of caviar. Just serve me some caviar. I love caviar.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. It's really yummy. Yeah, so heart disease and any inflammatory disease can be really a lot of the symptoms of it can be greatly alleviated when we use food as medicine, and GAPS is a really good way of doing it, a satisfying way of doing it. And
let's sum up the GAPS thing for me then.
Okay.
I know all about raw.
Yeah, which is great.
Been vegan, been vegetarian, been through all those things. I've kind of got a balance now.
Yeah.
I do have meat, but it's like generally the best meat I can possibly get, and it's actually getting less and less as my spiritual development goes up. I find myself not wanting it as much.
Fair enough.
There was a time when I thought it was all completely bad, but then I did a peyote ceremony with a load of Mexican chief on a ley line in Glastonbury, I think it was, and we were eating meat in the morning afterwards, and I was like, oh wow, what you eat meat? But then they talked about the reverence towards the animal and everything else, and
this is the way. If we can source our animal products from a regenerative model, so the mainstream media will not really be telling you about the fact that there are farmers out there who are farming regeneratively or with restoration agriculture or with holistic land management. These things have been going for decades, but they've been really suppressed and hidden. But we can farm more intensively than intensive, but actually as we build soil and enhance the web of life. There's a great little film called 100,000 Beating Hearts, which I'll send you the link to, which is the story of this kind of redneck cowboy who's farming beef in America. He's fourth generation, and he sees how all the artificial fertilizers and the routine hormones and the routine antibiotics that he's putting on his animals are actually just killing the farm, killing the life on the soil. And he turns it all around in about 10 years. He gets rid of all of the toxins and all of the poisons, and he brings in, on top of the 700 head of cattle he's got, on top of that he brings in 1,000 ewes and 1,000 goats and 500, I think he's got 100 breeding sows and ducks and geese and chickens for laying and chickens for meat. And he also brings in like 40 people to work on the farm. So he regenerates the whole of his town, all of his land. The bees are buzzing. And the pinnacle of the food pyramid is that he's got a colony of 26 bald eagles on his land. Wow. Okay, they nick a few chickens, but who cares? Whereas before, he only had 700 head of cattle, and now he's got this whole thriving ecosystem. It's so exciting. And if only the political will were behind it, we could all be living like that, and some of us would be enjoying meat products.
Well,
who are very poorly,
I'm glad you mentioned political will, because I think the first thing that a lot of people say to me is, and my mum's a great example. My mum had cancer. I got her on CBD oil. I got her on raw juicing. Thank God she's still here. When she had cancer drugs that were making her so depressed that she couldn't get out of bed, she wanted to kill herself. I found out that pomegranate seeds did the same thing with no side effects, so she got off them. And and she still goes out walking. This is 10 years later. She does about 7 miles a day with the dogs.
Great.
Which is fantastic. But she gets terrible pressure from her friends. Like, what are you doing buying that organic stuff? How can you afford to do that? It's great. And they're all dropping off, dying of cancer, but they're all eating Finder's frozen fucking pies, right? So, a lot of people we've really disassociated this. Well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, we've disassociated from the fact that, what price, I don't mind paying whatever they charge for this, I'll pay for it. Because I'm not
growing. What price health?
Exactly, what price health?
If you haven't got your health, what have you got?
Well, that's an attitude I've got, but a lot of people don't correlate the two. It's incredible. Yeah. And so the first thing they say is it's too expensive. I mean, organic meat is expensive. So how does GAPS work for people that haven't got any money?
Well, I buy one chicken a week, and the chicken comes from a biodynamic farm. I can see the chickens running around. They're on pasture. This is the thing. The animals need to be on the earth, and they need to enjoy a wide variety of different foods and scratch around in the earth, I buy one chicken. It costs me about £16. And I stick it in the stock pot. So this is like my cauldron of, magic potion that's going to keep me alive and well. Feeds my whole family for a week, okay? Because I put it in the stock pot with some celery, onion, and carrot, sea salt, black pepper. And I boil up that water for an hour and a half. And then that golden liquid is stock. So that's different to bone broth. It's a bit different. It's just a good stock, yeah? So I'm not, these days we have stock in a little cube, don't we? And it's like full of monosodium glutarate and the wrong kind of salt. And it's, we just don't need that terrible stuff. You use a few ladles of that golden liquid to cook all your vegetables in. So I eat a lot of vegetables. I'm mostly, if you look at what's on my plate, it's mostly plant-based, but I've got a huge knob of butter and a huge knob of lard, and from my pigs, from my own little small holding, and I use chicken stock. And that makes for a meal that gives you the building blocks as well as the cleansing. So this is the thing. We get cleansed with the beautiful foods you're showing me. We get cleansed, and this is hugely important. And organic is hugely important, because even, field grown vegetables are sprayed with stuff, that you just don't need in your system. It's just an added burden on your detox system. So yeah, organic veg, hugely important in vast quantities, but then you need a small amount of good fats from a good source and a small amount of stock. And then, I'll use one chicken breast chopped up into lots of little pieces in amongst that vegetable medley. And it's, it's got crushed garlic on and extra butter at the end. A lot of fats, we use a lot of fats because we're not having the carbs. So I'm not serving that veg and meat and good fats on a bed of rice or with pasta. No, we don't bother with that. But I make a lovely garlic bread with, you know, almond meal and eggs.
Garlic bread.
Yeah, make a lovely garlic bread.
Garlic bread's the future.
Garlic bread is the future. I love a garlic bread.
Oh, that sounds gorgeous, right? What you're describing I did read a medieval cooking book about a few years ago, and it does remind me, you know, and I love some of the recipes in there.
Wow, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I don't know where it is.
See if you can find the title for me. And the other thing we include as well is lots of fermented foods. So I'm just drinking kvass at the moment, which is beetroots and carrots with some ginger, and you stick it in one of those lovely big jars with a tap on it, and you fill it up with water, and then you add a little bit of whey, you know, like the liquid that's on the top of your yogurt. You just add a little dash of whey and maybe a pinch of sea salt, and then that lacto ferments the vegetables. So when I have a glass of this, it's an electrolyte drink, so it's full of good stuff, and it's also a probiotic, and it's refreshing. It's like a squash, you know. If
it's
the
like
kids,
kombucha, similar sort of thing.
Not exactly. It's lacto fermented, and kombucha is a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, which gives you another profile of probiotic, and it's a great drink. But it's also a little bit sugary and a little bit alcoholic sometimes, a little bit. So if you're prone, yeah. So things like fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi, we have a lot of.
I get kimchi here from this lovely couple at the market on Saturday. They make kimchi, they make pesto. The pesto that I bought off them the other week blew up in the cupboard because it was
watch out. With ferments.
You know, and they're making, and it's good value, and the kids love it. And
well, they don't love it.
Kimchi, that you definitely the pesto and stuff like that.
It's so great that you can get hold of it. You can get hold of kefir, milk kefir now in the supermarket, which is brilliant. You know, 10 years ago, didn't see any of this stuff on the shelves, which means there's a massive sea change and people are really getting the message. And the other thing we include a lot of on the GAPS protocol is fermented dairy, but you must ferment it yourself, because when you make your own yogurt and ferment it over 24 hours, which is not difficult, you just get a little yogurt making machine, chuck in the cream, chuck in the milk, add the Greek yogurt as a starter, put it on go, forget about it. Literally takes 30 seconds to do that. And then you've got clotted cream. Oh my God. But it's fermented over 24 hours. And because then all the lactose has been pre-digested for you. Yeah. So it's very difficult to be lactose intolerant if you do have issues with sugar and you've got a leaky gut. It's difficult to be lactose intolerant to something where it's already been pre-digested for you. So that is a super cleansing, super healing food, clotted cream, which we've been all put off dairy for obvious reasons. But if you can get organic milk and, you know, you can make your own yogurt fermented 24 hours, and that's a really healing extra addition to the GAPS protocol. You know, cream and berries straight out the freezer, frozen berries with a blob of clotted cream on it, a little bit of honey. You can have honey, you can have dates, you can have loads of dried fruits. You know, it's not like you're not going to have a sweet hit when you're on the GAPS protocol. You can make cakes and muffins and stuff with nut flours and seed flours rather than wheat and rye or whatever.
My breakfast. So I first came across this idea that we were short of fats, I think, when I came across Bulletproof. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, Bulletproof. Yeah, Bulletproof coffee.
The idea behind that was really good because the story was that the guy who created it was up a mountain, I think, in Tibet, and then he got taken in on a storm, and he got given this yak butter tea.
Nice.
And he couldn't understand how it restored him so well because it was like this heavy fat in a tea. So it's basically clean coffee with coconut oil and clean organic butter. And if you have, and I did this a few years ago, and I lost a few pounds and everything else. And I enjoyed it. You whisk it up; it's actually pretty tasty. But a lot of people are still, you know, we got in the 70s and 80s. It was all about cut out the fat, get this margarine instead of butter.
Lies.
Rogan, bullshitting, and it was just. And back then, I don't know. What it was like for you, but I lived in a house where my parents both worked, and we had quite a big garden, but it was all vegetables. It was, in fact, I was going through some photos last night that just came out the garage, and there was a picture of my dad in the same garden, and it had turned to lawn, and I dated it. And when all of the gardens in that village I grew up in turned to lawn around the same time, and guess what? It coincided exactly with when Tesco's started building big supermarkets, you know, because I remember when they came in, they didn't, in the 70s, I think it was, but the first Tesco's, I remember going, wow, look at this, amazing, this big shop and everything. but everybody stopped growing their own veg then.
Yeah.
And then you had the centralization of food, right? And I'm a massive decentralization advocate now, but fats got taken out of our diet.
That was criminal, actually.
Absolutely.
That was really criminal.
Our brains need fats.
Absolutely. Every single cell in your body is the membrane is made of phospholipids, fats. All the insulation on all of your nerves, myelin sheaths, when people get MS, it's because the myelin sheaths, their insulation, their fat layer over their nerves is broken down. So if you're feeling brain foggy and feeling like you're not all quite there, it's because you need fats. You need good fats, but you need them from a regenerative, pasture-fed source. Not from, the vegetable oils are so toxic. And that's one thing you need to immediately evict from your kitchen. Vegetable oils of any description, apart from, of course, extra virgin, cold pressed olive oil, which is olives of fruit. But sunflower oil, forget it. Canola oil, forget it. All of those vegetable oils they're good for oiling a cricket bat. That's it. Not even, really.
So, what else? What can people do right now? You've got a cookery course, right?
Yes, I do. I've got a cookery course. It's starting this Sunday. So what I do is I Zoom everyone on the course every Sunday morning, and we meet in my kitchen and I chop it up and chuck it in, whatever it is. But I talk to you about the whys you need to do. Why do we need to? Why are we doing this? And how do you do it? And how quick and easy is it? Because nobody's got any time to cook. So that's why it's called timeless cookery, alluding to the wisdom of the ancestors and how these principles go way back. And it's so easy to keep a stock pot. People are frightened to have bones boiling in a pot. They're like, oh, it's going to go off. I'm going to get germs. No, we need to get into it, So yeah, it's an hour on a Sunday morning. And then you've got a whole week to watch it again in the support group and ask me all the questions you want about your health issues. So I'm like your personal coach for 12 whole weeks. And the reason it's 3 months is you can't expect this sort of thing to just happen overnight. And when you do start to eat differently, sometimes you have something called a healing crisis, or a Herxheimer effect. Yeah, where you start to feel absolutely terrible. Not always, not if you do it gently, but some people have a real crash, and then you might want to go running to the doctor if that's what your usual thing is, but that might not be the best thing to do. You might have flu-like symptoms or cold-like symptoms, but really what you need to do is have some ginger tea and go to bed and have a hot salt bath or something, so it's good to have someone to hold your hand, and that's why I'm a GAPS coach. Yeah, and the course starts this weekend.
You help us find ingredients as well, because for example, I'm a very keen ingredients man, but I was looking the other day at my Himalayan pink salt, thinking I'm not sure this is the right stuff,
Okay.
Because sometimes you're busy. I've got 5 kids, it's busy business for them and everything else, and it's this time-saving aspect I love, because I do have I'm looking at it now. I've got a great big blue crock pot on there, which I made a curry in last night, and we didn't have any rice, and it was sweet potatoes and spinach and blah, blah, blah.
But you're kind of doing it naturally then.
Well, I'm trying to do it. But oh no, I was going to say to you earlier on is like, when you said about when you discovered it and you felt so good and you want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
There was a funny story I was going to tell you. When I got back from the fasting, the first time I did it twice. First time I got back, I was looking at the food that was on the table going, that's poison, that's poison. I was such a pain in the ass because I was just going around telling everybody. And I think actually my son would be embarrassed about this, but if you go on YouTube and type in Joe's Healthy Kids, you'll see me, because Joe, my eldest son, he was the only one who had one vaccine. None of the other kids had vaccines.
Oh, well done. My God, I vaccinated mine by mistake. I didn't realize.
Their mother was very switched on with all of that, and she did loads of research, and it was, thank God for that. But because of that, I got really keen into his food particularly. So I was like, so he actually had his own YouTube channel. He was like 7 or 8 years old, and he cringes about it now, but he's there, doing the juicing and everything else.
Oh, brilliant.
So I love all this stuff, and I think it's so important, because I said to you before we went live that even though I've done all this education, done everything I can to get it into the kids' heads, the peer pressure that they're under to drink the Monster energy drinks, the aspartame's in everything, right? And anybody watching this who doesn't know what aspartame is, I'm going to tell you a very quick story. Donald Rumsfeld, who was Defense Secretary of the US when they invaded Iraq with George Bush, who's an evil man, has actually killed more people with aspartame than he did as a Defense Secretary, because was one of the owners of aspartame as a sweetener, which took 7 attempts to get past the FDA in the 1970s. 7 attempts before the bribe was big enough for it to be called a food. What it actually is the genetically modified feces of the E. coli bacteria, and it was developed as a chemical weapon in the 1960s. And that is in almost everything you can buy from a convenience store. It's in every drink. It's even in the drinks that have got sugar in that are not low fat. They've put it in everything. It's also in all of the stuff you might get from your pharmacy, you know, your vitamins. You know, it's very hard to find vitamin C supplements for kids that don't have aspartame in. It's just extraordinary. And they changed the name. They call it Splenda, sucralose, sweetener, blah, 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 blah. That one thing is responsible for the deaths of people. Just don't understand how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
Right?
You just think you're having a bit of chewing gum. You just go, it's just a bit of chewing gum. No, it's a dose of aspartame, or however you say it, aspartame.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I mean,
it's a neurotoxin. It is a neurotoxin. I always get my kids to read the labels. I always say, read the labels. If it's got aspartame in it or sucralose, don't go near it. But Xylitol, by the way, Xylitol, by the way, which comes from birch sap and various other sources, is okay. And actually, do you read Nexus magazine ever?
I have. I've not seen it in a few years though.
Yeah, I've subscribed to it, and there was a really interesting article about chewing gum with xylitol in it. So I think there's a brand called Epic. So you can get a little jar of chewing gum chiclets, you know, those, because I love a bit of chewing gum, you know. And if you chew that, apparently, it actually helps with your tooth. It keeps your teeth good. Keeps your teeth really good. That chewing gum with xylitol in it, called Epic. So there's a little plug for that. It's got us, because you've got to provide everyone with an alternative. Until you provide someone with an alternative, you can't say don't have it, because they just won't go there.
Well, I know this is the thing with the kids, right? So you can educate them as much as you can, but the peer pressure on them is huge. You know, I went to pick up my son the other day, and he saw me coming, and he hid the can behind here, and just literally, because he knew I was going to say it. And I said, "What's that? Where's that can?" He was like, "What can? What can?" Like I'm stupid, and you know, bless him, but
we've got to say to ourselves, you know, that we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and we all get an A+ just for being aware. And that if we do slip up and I get fish and chips and you know, whatever, we just go, oh, I really enjoyed that, and thank you that there was some food on my plate, you know, and try and have an attitude of I'm doing the best I can, and I'm still okay, even if I fell off the wagon or whatever, you know.
Yeah, but I think what's really interesting about your work is that it's extremely important. I think it's extremely important. I think right now, people who are worried about that, I mean, natural health stuff is going through the roof, right? You know, I've been taking and selling CBD for years, right? For example, and CBD saved my life, changed my life beyond belief. And, you know, I remember meeting somebody last year who was mother of one of the kids, and she was going through chemo, and I said, "So what are you doing?" She said, "Well, doing this and doing that." I said, "Have you tried CBD?" And she's like, "I won't go near CBD. That's the devil's work." And I was like, "You've got cancer. Why wouldn't you look at it?" But this is the crazy thing. You know, the marketing, the propaganda against all of God's gifts, which this is how I see this. Like, you know, I make this, and it's like, this is God's work. There it is. It's all there. All the answers are there. You know, shocking. But it is really important to talk about this stuff and to, you know, switch people. I love the sound of this. I might join you.
I'd love it if you want to join me.
I'm really into that, because Sunday is really my favorite cooking day. You know, it's my meditation.
What's quite good is to do, like, if you're not going to be having crackers and bread and whatever, I'll be showing you how to substitute those things. So you can have a kind of baking day where you spend 3 hours and then you end up with a granola, some muffins, some breakfast bars, some crackers or whatever. And then, you know, you can let the things that you know are causing you issues slip off the shopping list when you've got those substitutes, you know. So it's very nourishing, really satisfying. It's super sensuous, and it's just a lovely way to eat, Gaps. I don't know why we're not teaching this at schools, you know.
Well,
we'll be teaching it.
Well, that brings me on to another. I mean, I've not lived in the UK for 7 years.
You're in Ireland.
I mean, I was in Marrakesh before here for 4 years, and I was like, I was done with the UK. I could see what was coming, and I was like, I don't want to be here. Then why I'm in Ireland is another story, but. I remember the kids, I used to package up their school lunch, and it would be organic this, organic that, nuts, seeds, a boiled egg, blah, blah, blah. And then I've told this story in another video, so anybody watching, if I'm repeating, I apologize, but if you've not heard this, is good. So the kids came back one day and they said, oh, we've just learned the food pyramid today, Dada, and apparently bread's healthier than broccoli. And I went, what? That's what they teach you in schools.
Really?
And
healthier,
then,
or that we should just be eating more of it?
Bread was higher up on the healthiness than broccoli. Oh. And I was like, well, hang on a minute, this is not good. And then the kids were getting taken out of the dining room and told to sit on their own in another room because they had boiled eggs in their lunch, because one of the kids was slightly allergic to eggs. And I ended up going to see the headmistress about this. But all the other kids are eating Jaffa cakes and blah, blah, blah with pasteurized eggs in. Yeah. And you've got somebody who's slightly allergic to eggs, and they're not allowed to be in the same room as somebody who's got an egg.
Oh my God.
And I was like, this is absolute insanity.
Yeah, man.
And, you mentioned doctors earlier, and, people don't realize that, most doctors, I interviewed a whistleblower doctor last week, actually, Dr. Q, who's very interesting. He talked about the mind control and the brainwashing of the whole medical profession from the perspective of being an American MD. And, I found out years ago that, in the UK, you do 7 years studying to be a doctor. And I think you get like 3 hours lectures on nutrition.
I think it's 2 weeks. Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of doctors here. 2 weeks. It's a joke.
Crazy. It's crazy. And then everybody's saying more money for the NHS. All you've got to do is get everybody growing vegetables organically again. All you need the NHS for were broken bones.
And I agree with you, and we need small farms everywhere. More small farms. All the small farmers have been swallowed up by the big farms, and the political kind of, politicians have just eaten away at the small farmers with their EU rules and stuff. It's shocking. And we just need small farms because we need the animals. Mother Nature designs her systems with animals in them. Mm-hmm. Mother Nature doesn't design any system with no animals in it. And also there's no peoples on Earth who actually eat a purely plant-based diet. Some people might argue that there are, but the Weston A. Price Foundation is a really, really interesting organization. So Weston A. Price was a dentist in the 1920s and 30s in America. And he was sent by the American Dental Association to go and visit indigenous populations in Switzerland, in the Inuit to the far north, the Aboriginal peoples of Antipodes, and all sorts of places all over the world. And he looked at their ancestral diets, which were very high in cholesterol and rich foods, and then looked at how, when the standard American diet stuff started coming in, the Kellogg's cornflakes and the Coca-Cola, how it screwed up everyone's teeth. It's because the way the children's jawline was growing differently. Their teeth were all crooked, And he took photographs to show kind of like, this is what you do if you eat this, and this is what you look like if you have the ancestral diet. This is what you look like if you start on the American nonsense, on that processed stuff. And he came back with all that amazing information. And of course, it was roundly swept under the carpet by the you-know-who's. Yeah. But it's been revived by this amazing woman, Sally Fallon. The Weston A. Price Foundation, you can find masses of science-based information. All the articles are written with all of the citations, and is also written for the layman as well. So you can read about vaccinations, you can read about fats and how we need the good fats. And, that there has been a massive push, I feel. Someone's funding the vegan agenda.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And whilst it may be really good for some people, and like you say, I'm getting more plant-based and I'm feeling more connected to source and connected to spirit, that's as maybe, and that's good. But we need, if we are cleanse, you need nourishing at some point and kind of grounding, because we're earthlings. We are earthlings, My daughter, who's 17, and I have had provable psychic communications, and she regularly speaks with entities and beings in her meditations, and then comes and feeds back to me. So she's eating a lot of meat, not a lot of meat, but I mean well sourced chicken and beef and lamb. So it doesn't stop you having spiritual experiences if you do eat meat.
No, I didn't why it didn't. I was just like,
no, not you, but a lot of other people do. A lot of vegans say, you've got to just give up meat. You've got to give up meat because we've got to ascend to 5D.
I've never heard, no, I don't hold with that.
Oh, no, me neither.
you reminded me. Have you ever heard of the Hunza?
Yes.
Did you ever read the book about the guy that went to see the Hunza?
Was it?
I don't remember who wrote it. I think it was in the 50s or 40s, but was an American guy, went, I think it was Afghanistan, and it was in the mountains of Afghanistan. There was this tribe called the Hunza that lived to 120 naturally. They all had long hair. Their farms were like on steps. So they were taking big, long strides up and down every day. They all died with their full set of teeth, long hair. Yeah. And this guy went to work out why and how they did. And it was all because of what they ate. It was all because of where they lived.
I've got a feeling that guy who spent all that time with the Hunza passed on all his information to a guy called Patrick Flanagan, who makes an amazing supplement with hydrogen water. I can't remember, but this guy, Patrick Flanagan, in some of his videos, I've heard him speaking of when he was small. He told his mother that his name wasn't Patrick at all when he was about 7 or 8. He said, my name's not Patrick. It's Nikola Tesla. And then they went and looked it up in an encyclopedia. So yeah, he says he's got Nikola Tesla's workshop in his head, but he won't build it again because he's scared of what happened, because what happened last time. Do you know what I mean?
Well, all that technology is already being used now.
Yeah.
Well, there's some of it's going to come out, I think.
I really hope so. I'm really excited for the future, for the free energy stuff that's happening. And
what did you see? Well, we talked about Thrive 2. If nobody's watched Thrive 2, I'll put a link to it below. But yeah, there are Tesla towers going up in Texas right now.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Super exciting. I was going to say something else. What was it? God damn.
Sorry, I
can't do this live. Tesla
towers, and you said you were getting chills when I said.
Yeah. No. Yeah, because one of my kids refused to answer his name when he could first speak, and he said, "I Gary." Right, and we'd be like, "What?" And then for 6 months, he just told this whole life story. And, you know, it got to the point where there was a Hollywood crew come to film him as part of it. We decided not to do that in the end. But, you know, there's no question that we are eternal spirits, and we're in this loop system. And I think we're about to go that way. And food is a really, really, really important part of this, especially if you're wearing a mask every day. You've got to sort out your immune system. You've got to. I was going to ask you this as well, Emma. There is a big problem with the fact that the soil now is depleted, and most people are definitely magnesium and zinc deficient, at least. You know, how does GAPS get over that?
We take Epsom salts baths or foot baths, Epsom salts or Dead Sea salts. You can buy them in bulk. You know, you don't have to just go and buy the little pot and pay a fortune. You can buy them in bulk, 25 kilogram bags, and you stick a couple of mugs of that in your bath. And you have a good old soak for at least half an hour, at least twice a week for magnesium. And zinc, oysters are really good for zinc.
Well, I had a bad experience with oysters in Manchester. It was like Guinness and an oyster, and then I was in hospital for 3 days, so I'm not allowed to eat them for another 5 years, I think. But
whoa! Well, if you heal and seal the gut and get your gut flora, because this is the thing, because of all the low-level antibiotics and the nonsense that they put in the foods, our gut microbiome is at about 50% diversity of what it was when the grandparents were doing meat and 2 veg at the wartime. We're about 50% down, and it's the same in the soil. The soil is demineralized, and the microorganisms in the soil are also down. But there's stuff we can do about that if only there was the political will behind it. You know,
it's almost as if somebody wanted us dead.
Isn't that so? I can't help but come to the same conclusion, Mark.
There's
a depopulation exercise going on, and I know we're laughing about it because when you see it, you just go, "What?" But when I first found out about that, though, I did freeze. Literally, my back froze and I couldn't walk. It was chemtrails when I found out about the geoengineering and the chemtrails in 2009 or something.
Yeah.
And my back froze and I couldn't walk for about 2 weeks because I was like, why did I have children? Why did I bother? We're all going to die.
I've been there. Yeah.
But now I feel like I feel really powerful and really strong in the knowledge that I can see it. I see it, I dissolve it. It's all finished for the bad guys now. We can see through it, forget it. We're going to survive and thrive now.
Yeah. Brilliant. And we're going to do it with GAPS.
Yeah, why not? It's one way.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description to the Cookery Course. And
lovely.
Anything else you want me to? Just amazing to speak to you. Beautiful
so
stuff.
Nice to meet you. Yes, I've had a lovely little while with you. It's been really nice. Lots of love.
Wonderful. You're doing great work, and it's really important. So thanks a lot for being here, and let's catch up Again.
I'd like to do that. All
Yeah,
right.
anytime, Emma. You take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna stop.